My son's tears reflected in the afternoon sunlight as he stood immobile in front of our front door, his backpack sliding off one shoulder, his 13-year-old body shaking with puzzlement. A gruff man in a tawdry security uniform yelled into a walkie-talkie, his voice brimming over with unwarranted arrogance. My boy had attempted to walk home from school like any other day to be halted by this HOA Renaub, who said he was not authorized to get into his own home. I had just come back from an overseas counterterrorism operation, driving into our drive in my unmarked black SUV when I witnessed the sight. The guard puffed out his chest, encouraged by the thin badge stuck to his shirt, and pointed at the sidewalk like he was branding cattle. I exited my car, slow and deliberate, eye to eye with him. He had no notion I was a Homeland Security Commander, or that he had just lit a fire by holding my kid hostage in his little power play. I walked up boots, crunching on the gravel, my son crying as he pointed at the guard. The man held up a palm as if I were some suburban pater. He could push around. "What's the problem?" I said, my voice level, but with an edge of steel. He did not look at the DHS badge attached to my belt, just droned on, approximately a new HO regulation. Minors couldn't enter without being accompanied by a registered resident supervision. My son resides here. He possesses a key. He was attempting to enter his own house. The guard dismissed it, citing he'd never seen him before, and I'd have to put in a formal request for my child to be allowed access. The ridiculousness smacked me in the face. Paperwork for my own child to enter his own door. I informed him that he was making a mistake. He sneered, instructed me to take it up with the HOA president, and warned that meddling would merit me a citation. His tone employed condescension as if he was doing me a favor. I could have flashed my badge, dropped my title, and seen his bluster collapse, but I resisted. I wanted to know how far this nonsense went. After getting my son inside and soothing him, I sat in my home office pulling up the HOA's newest newsletter. Buried on page 5 was a clause regarding minor escort requirements inserted without a vote or community input. It was the brainchild of Diane Kessler, the HOA's self-proclaimed queen, who neighbors reported had become more and more erratic over the last 6 months. She'd hired a private security company, Falcon Watch Services, bragging about them as the neighborhood's protectors. Their website screamed amateur former mall cops and bar bouncers, no state licenses, no real training. I made surreptitious calls to DHS colleagues requesting information on Falcon Watch. They discovered a shell company with phony addresses, a director who was Diane's nephew, and HOA fees inexplicably rose to cover their payroll. This was not mere overreach, it reeked of scam. That night, I strolled the neighborhood as his keen residents approached, some muttering, others seething. An elderly woman, Mrs. Carter, related the same guard had grilled her grandson for parking too long. A father reported his daughter was sought out for skateboarding at the clubhouse. Everyone was tired but afraid to do something. Diane, dubbed the Empress by locals, governed with Fine's covert meetings and her paid enforcers. I placed 2 tiny cameras, one at the HOA gate, another at the clubhouse. I required solid evidence and not rumors. My son observed, still upset, wondering why I hadn't killed the guard on the spot. I knelt beside him, indicating a photo on my desk. Me in Kabul following a hostage rescue. Justice requires evidence. Kid, I said, we don't shout, we plan. That evening, my cameras recorded the guard from the morning walking down the street, flashing his light into parked vehicles. He banged on a door, yelling about a trash can, an inch out of position. At 9:17 p.m., another guard searched a teen for loitering after visiting a pal. I saved the clips, I uploaded them onto a drive tagged HOA abuse, and sent them via email to Special Agent Mark Reynolds at the DOJ subject. Illegal security activities in civilian neighborhood. I signed off sans my title. Mark knew what I was. The footage spoke louder than rank by morning. Mark wrote back, confirmed pattern of complaints. Pinging a contact. Stay sharp. I knew his style short was serious. I christened this Operation Neighborhood Reckoning. But first I required more. I strolled the streets once more, mealing in as a typical dad. A retired cop. Tony told me he'd been ticketed for a non-conforming mailbox. A single mother, Lisa, told me, guards followed her son for riding too fast. An elderly couple ceased to host their grandkids due to guards questioning them. It was harassment disguised as order, green-lighted by Diane's illusion of authority. I investigated home minutes hidden in a clunky online portal. They disclosed Diane had increased dues for security improvements without a ballot directing funds to Falcon Watch through inflated bills signed by her nephew Tim Kessler. I printed them, feeling a money trail that would bury her. That evening, a man came to my door, plainclothes, buzz-cut, piercing stare. He identified himself, Ellis Marks' contact. He placed a DHS-stamped document on my table, complaints affidavit and unlicensed activity reports on Falcon Watch. "We competed this group," he said. "Your video hits them for overstepping. We require a civilian face for the case. That's you." I nodded. I dismantled terror cells, and HOA was a little smaller, smugger beast. Ellis gave me a burner phone call hawk when it's time, he said, disappearing into the dusk. Next day, my cameras captured a guard toppling a kid's bike, allowing him to fall without assisting. I sent the clip to Ellis. No response action was brewing. A burner text arrived. HOA meeting this evening. Be present, smile. I wore a polo shirt and jeans, looking like just any neighbor, and went to the clubhouse. Diane stood in front, wearing a navy blazer, complaining about youth crime and ID scans for children. I waited, then put up my hand. She stuttered, seeing me. I asked her which law allowed her to enforce federal-type entrance rules on a private subdivision. She babbled on about bylaws. I pushed her. Where did the charter permit pat-downs or denying children access? She evaded mentioning emergencies. I slipped an invoice on her podium. Acknowledge the signature, I requested, loud and clear. Her face contorted. The DOJ does, I appended. Gasps rippled. Diane termed it slander, threatening to report me to the cops. I leaned in, whispering, "I am the cops," and smiled as instructed. I walked away, leaving chaos brewing. By dawn, whispers were rampant. Group chats buzzed. Who's the guy who torched Diane? My son returned home, telling me that the guards avoided him. They were shaken. Their phony authority beginning to crack, but cornered wannabes are dangerous, so I left the cameras rolling. A second burner text said, "Prepare sweep." I knew what was in store. DHS wasn't there to talk. They bring warrants and knock down Diane's empire. I hacked the HO's newsletter draft, dropping in a note. Expect government audits of security contractors. Stay calm. It was indefinite but panic-provoking. That night, guards gathered at the clubhouse, eyeing the newsletter stuck on the window. Diane was MIA, probably begging her nephew to rescue her. I slept very little, backing up files, checking cameras, preparing evidence. At 6 a.m., an armored SUV pulled up, followed by a van. I messaged Hawk, confirmed. At 7:04 a.m., the sweep came. DHS agents descended upon the guard shack, flashing badges. The guard who had blocked my son had his phone confiscated. Another group served warrants to the HOA office. Diane erupted in a robe, yelling about rights. An agent presented her with a DOJ folder that had her name. I stood across the street, coffee in hand, watching as neighbors taped some cheering. One guard got cuffed for possessing an unlicensed gun. Another attempted to make a run but was caught. Diane ranted on about HOA sovereignty, stating they could protect their own land. An agent interrupted her. "Ma'am, we are the government." That sentence was viral by noon. The HOA building was gutted, files bagged, computers removed. I provided DHS with my footage, invoices, and testimony as the reporting party. Ellis nodded. "You constructed the case before we got there." By midday, the neighborhood was a web of federal tape. Diane was grilled, facing charges from fraud to illegal surveillance. The guards found to be unlicensed with criminal records were prohibited. My son, carrying a small flag, inquired whether he might play at the park once more. "Anywhere you like, buddy," I replied. That evening, neighbors congregated on the go invites, just instinct, lawn cherries, music, children running wild. They laughed, embraced, exchanged tales of Diane's dictatorship. It was not a party, it was a rebirth. News erupted, the government soundbite cycling on television. Diane's accusations mounted: conspiracy fund, misappropriation, obstruction. Falcon Watch was a cover siphoning dues into accounts belonging to her relatives for years. The HOA became a national icon of suburban corruption. My son's tears, the spark that lit the fuse I championed, lasting change. The interim board delayed dues opened. Meetings and envisioned an open charter. At a picnic, neighbors munched on kebabs and envisioned playgrounds rather than fines. Mrs. Carter thanked me, saying, "My quiet strength reminded her authority could protect, not punish, a council formed not to rule, but to serve." Gibson sent a note. "Case closed. Keep watching." I filed it away. The guard who'd hurt my son begged forgiveness in court. Broken admitting Diane egged him on. I wished him growth and left. Weeks later, the HOA was reborn as a residence council open, and fair kids biked without fear. My son hosted friends and porches glowed with warmth. A banner at the old guard shack read, "Welcome home." With my name on a thank you note, my wife handed me coffee, urging me to rest. I'd never quite cease watching, but for the moment I breathed. This wasn't merely a victory for my child, it was a warning. Power abused will find patience proof and a father who never turns.